And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this very exciting segment today on the 10th day of September 2022. Well, it's a beautiful day out here in Brisbane today, and it is 18 degrees and slightly to get up to about 23 degrees later in the day, and it's going to remain mainly sunny. So, well, right now, let's move on with the show. And what do we have for you in store today? We have, of course, all the coverage, and that's regarding Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's passing away at age 96, and of course, what's going to happen with King Charles III? When would the proclamation be? So let's begin. First of all, he is our all the tributes that have been coming through. First off is former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull.
This is the overused term. It is the end of an era. This is an era, and it's something, at a time of such drastic change. When everything certainty seems to be gone. We're in an age where you have to expect the unexpected, as Margaret Thatcher said, and that's discombobulating and destabilising. But the Queen has been one of those things, that one of those people, but one of those institutions, presences, that has been constant and therefore reassuring. So this will be an unsettling time, and that's why, as I was saying earlier, I think we will look back on these 70 years and thank her for the leadership and the reassurance that she's shown. But as to what is over the other side of the hill, I think it'll take a while for us to work that out.
Any final reflections? We know that you need to go, so.
Well, I just say I'm filled with, as Lucy is, with great sadness. It is, it's been when we met the Queen on that occasion, she gave us a portrait of herself, the official portrait of herself and Prince Philip, in some boxes, which I'm sure they give to every Prime Minister. And she said, with a wry smile, she said, "Here you are, you can put them in a cupboard, I suppose." And which was charming and funny. And last night, as we were filled with such dread, because it was obvious that things would turn very bad, I took the portrait of the Queen out and set it up. We just thought, what an amazing life, what amazing leadership. And it is the end of an era. And let's hope that the future after the Queen's passing is one where we will have leadership as dedicated and selfless as she has shown.
Yeah, beautifully put. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your reflections and be with us.
And as per Malcolm Turnbull, it is hard to hold your emotions back, and I've seen so many people, of stage talking about the Queen and getting emotional. Even yesterday, I couldn't hold myself, breaking the news. Well, right now, let's hear from the other former Prime Minister, John Howard.
The longest serving British monarch, therefore the longest serving in what is arguably the second oldest after the Holy See institution in Western civilisation. Whatever our views are about constitutional arrangements, and everybody knows mine, should take pause to honour this incredible life. My own dealings with her are ones that I will remember with great affection. She had a great sense of humour. She had what seemed to me to be a deep curiosity about Australia. She understood different features of Australian life. I think we did differ in that her sporting passion was directed towards the sporting passion of one of my very distinguished Labor predecessors, but I did share some happy moments with her on the morning of the second test at Lord's a couple of Ashes series ago, and I'm very happy to report that during the time that was there, 2 English wickets fell, and I was disappointed when she left. But deep down, she was a person who took very seriously her role as the Queen of the United Kingdom and her other realms and territories, and as head of the Commonwealth. And she always respected that it was a constitutional role, and whatever her thoughts may have been at the time, in the lead up to the referendum that was held in this country on whether we or not we should retain the monarch, she always kept a proper constitutional difference. And I think I can speculate as to what her feelings were after the result was announced, but at no time did she do other than honour the democratic acceptance of her as the Queen of Australia. Be happy to take questions.
What's your favourite memory with the Queen?
Oh, I think it's impossible to do that. I do remember the first time I saw her after I had become Prime Minister. I didn't see her in the first year I was Prime Minister. I didn't go to Britain until probably May of 1997, and I went with my wife. We went out to Windsor Castle and had a very pleasant. I had an audience with her. There was just her and myself, and then we had a delightful lunch. And her mother and sister were both at the lunch, and Queen Mother, of course, showed extraordinary knowledge of Australia, and of course she'd come with her husband to open the old Parliament House in 1927. So she had a very deep knowledge of Australia, but she talked in a very convivial fashion about Australia. And I do remember the last time I saw her, it was at an Order of Merit luncheon also at Windsor Castle, and both she and her late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, were there, and after coffee they wandered around talking to people, and we engaged in conversation about Australia, and I mentioned something about winks, and of course her eyes lit up, and I'd really struck a great chord. I think she had more knowledge of winks than I did. I mean, I knew a little bit about winks, but I didn't pretend that I'd have had a Bob Hawke-like knowledge of it. But I can remember a wonderful occasion when Jeanette and I were at a Commonwealth Heads of Government gathering in Edinburgh. It was later that same year, and we had dinner with the then Canadian Prime Minister, Jean Chrétien, who'd come from Quebec. And halfway through the dinner, there were just a small number of us, 6 or 8, the Queen and Jean Chrétien broke into French, and for several minutes, and I mean, my schoolboy French was not much good, but I don't think there was anything very controversially being said about the other guests. But she had that great capacity to put people at ease, and no matter who they were. Now, you can say, well, you know, she was trained to do that. Yes, but people can be trained to do that and they don't do it very well because they don't like doing it. She liked doing it. You know, she had fundamentally an interest in people and fundamentally a great respect for people, whatever their station was.
Always having a great respect for the people, and of course her sense of humour that has been commented upon by many people, as Malcolm Turnbull said before, when he was the Prime Minister, when he first went to see her, he gave him that memento and said, here it is, you can probably put it in a cupboard. What a nice gesture, what a way to say that. Well, right now we've heard from Malcolm Turnbull, we've heard from the previous Prime Minister, John Howard. Right now, let's hear from Tony Abbott.
Abbott, welcome. Thank you for being with us. Your thoughts on the death of Queen Elizabeth?
This is a sad and sombre day, but it's also a day to give thanks for a wonderful life of duty and service. She said in that famous broadcast from South Africa on her 21st birthday, "My whole life be it long or short, shall be devoted to your service and that of the great imperial family to which we all belong. Now, times have changed and the empire has become a disparate commonwealth, but one constant has been the Queen's constant fidelity to that wonderful pledge.
And Mr Abbott, how do you think the people of Great Britain in particular will respond to this loss, given that she was in many ways the last living link to the generation that fought and won the Second World War and saw them through 7 long decades of tremendous change?
Indeed, and that's the magic of the monarchy, if you like, that there is a continuity and a stability in the Crown which you rarely find in normal politics. But I think that the British people, and indeed the people of her other realms and the wider world, will, in a sense, be better placed to take this in their stride because of her wonderful example. Let's face it, the Queen embodied that wartime motto, keep calm and carry on. And after a few days where many of us might shed a quiet tear, I'm sure that's the spirit in which we will take up our lives.
Tony Abbott, how many times did you meet her and what are your fondest memories of her?
Look, I didn't meet her that often, but the meetings that I had, I very much cherish. I was extremely conscious that I was in the presence of history. She had 16 Australian Prime Ministers, she's had 15 British Prime Ministers, she's met 14 US Presidents, she's seen things, she's done things, she's lived through things that I never could, that almost no one ever could. And that gave her a presence which was both uplifting and even, in a sense, ennobling, and I was incredibly honoured and grateful to have my share of it.
Tony Abbott, earlier today we saw your former colleague and sometimes rival in a couple of different realms, Malcolm Turnbull, in tears, showing his emotion at the loss of Her Majesty. That might have surprised quite a few people. How did this affect you personally when you heard the news today?
Well, I suppose I was somewhat prepared by the messages that I got last night, and the morning's news confirmed my premonitions. Her Majesty had passed away in my night, but I guess that was, if you like, something of a preparation. I'm not surprised that Malcolm was much moved because, in a sense, all of us are Elizabethans, whether we're convinced supporters of the Crown or whether we prefer a different system of government. I think all of us are Elizabethans. I've read some beautiful statements today by Australian Prime Ministers. I think that the Prime Ministerial Club has been seen at its best today, and perhaps something of Her Majesty's spirit has settled upon us.
We've heard now from Tony Abbott as well, sharing his views on there, and of course Malcolm Turnbull, who got very, very emotional. Right now, let's go to New Zealand and hear it from the New Zealand Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern.
It is with great sadness that New Zealand wakes to the news of the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. I know I speak for all New Zealanders in conveying our deepest sympathy to members of the royal family and condolences to King Charles III on behalf of the government and New Zealanders at this time of enormous loss. The last days of the Queen's life captures who she was in so many ways, working till the very end on behalf of the people she loved. And that is why I'm sure that we will receive the news of her passing with both emotions of deep sadness, but also gratitude for a life that was utterly and completely devoted to the service of others. The Queen has been such a constant in our lives for 70 years, the longest-serving monarch in British history. Over her reign, she has come to define notions of service, charity and consistency. Her commitment to her role and to all of us has been without question and unwavering. She has also demonstrated courage, compassion and humour. A strong memory I will have of her is her laughter. She was extraordinary. To honour the passing of the Queen of New Zealand and realm countries, we move into a period of official mourning. Flags will be flown at half-mast. Preparations begin for a state memorial service to be held after the official funeral is held in the United Kingdom. While we await details of these arrangements, we anticipate it will be held in the UK in about 10 days' time. I know many will want to share their thoughts at this time. There will be condolence books placed in the Beehive Foyer, the National Library and Wellington Cathedral. I expect across New Zealand local arrangements will likely be made. This is a time of deep sadness. Young or old, there is no doubt that a chapter is closing today, and with that we share our thanks for an incredible woman who we were lucky enough to call our Queen. I think the thing that stands out for me, or stood out for me the most at the time of meeting the Queen in person or indeed speaking to her on the phone, was just the level of knowledge and care that she had for New Zealand. I remember gifting her on behalf of New Zealand the first time that I met her an image of her visit to New Zealand. It was some 50 years prior, and a young woman at that time had caught a Polaroid image of her. And I did not for a moment expect her to recall anything of the moment that photo was taken, but it showed her in the back of her vehicle laughing. Not only did she remember the visit, she could remember what was making her laugh. That speaks to me of someone who gave a life of service, but also enjoyed the role that she played, as difficult as I'm sure it was.
And as difficult as it was, as you mentioned there, well, right now, the next big question, what happens now?
I want to talk about what happens next in a moment, but firstly, your reflections, your feelings this morning on the passing of Queen Elizabeth II.
Well, I think like most people, it was still a shock to me. I mean, we knew she was very old and we knew that had been sort of preparing for it for a long time. But she had seemed so hale and hearty, and we saw a photo of her the day before meeting with the Prime Minister, and it's really surprising that she could have died so quickly. And look, I have to say I feel actually quite glad for her, because the end of her life was not the end that many of us have, which is, you know, miserable and in bad health. She actually seemed quite well before she finally peacefully died. So it's a long life of service, and hopefully it was a very peaceful death.
We're showing our viewers now and those last photos of the Queen just 2 days ago, as you said, formally appointing Liz Truss as the new Prime Minister of the UK, her 15th Prime Minister. And yes, she did look a bit frail, and she looked all of her 96 years, but as you say, relatively healthy, which underlines the shock of her dying 2 days after these photos were taken. Okay, we now have King Charles, and obviously, first and foremost, he is mourning the death of his mother, but what happens next? How does the succession... He formally became king, of course, the minute his mother died, but take us through the mechanics of the change now.
Okay, so under both Australian law and United Kingdom law, he immediately becomes king. There's no interregnum, which is something that, you know, a gap between monarchs. In Australia, we have the same rules for succession as the United Kingdom, but they're actually part of our own law. So we potentially could change them if we want, but we choose to have the same rules. The consequence of that is that you don't actually need things like a proclamation or a coronation or anything else like that to make you king. There's nothing that's actually needed to identify you as king because you automatically become king under those laws. However, in the United Kingdom, there are a number of ceremonies that are required. So they do have an accession council, which occurs within 24 hours of the death of the monarch, and that's where they invite all the Privy Councillors to come, and that includes any Australians who are still Privy Councillors. Now, we haven't appointed Privy Councillors for a very long time, so there are very few Australians left who fall within that category. There's Sir William Heseltine, who was the Queen's former private secretary. He is an Australian and he lives in Australia, either in Perth or Sydney. He moves between the two. So he would be invited. Of course, being able to get there in time from the other side of the world is a bit difficult. So there will be some Australians there, but mostly they will be British people or people from the other realms that still appoint Privy Councillors. And at that accession meeting, King Charles will make a number of oaths, which are important in the British system. So that will happen, and then there will be heralds that will go around the United Kingdom proclaiming that. And I understand there are plans then for the new king to go and visit various parts of the United Kingdom immediately to be visibly seen as the king in Scotland and in Wales and in Northern Ireland and all those places. So this is something he's prepared for an extremely long time. The preparations and the plans are all there, and so now it will be a matter of activating them. So I think we'll see quite a lot of King Charles in the next few days.
And, OK, he takes the oaths at that Accession Council meeting, but we may not expect to see a formal coronation, and possibly for some time, not forgetting that Queen Elizabeth wasn't formally coronated until, I think it was more than a year after she became Queen back in 1952.
Yes, there's a lot of ceremony involved in coronations, so they do require quite a lot of preparation. But also you need time as well for people to mourn the previous monarch. It would be inappropriate to be doing something celebratory of the kind of a coronation so soon after a monarch's death. So normally it's about a year. Also, interestingly, just a matter of curiosity, there are traditional inherited positions in the United Kingdom that involve the person who gets to organise the ceremony. So that actually gets passed down a line from people from centuries and centuries ago. So you'd have to really hope that the person who's inherited it and holds it at the moment is competent and can do a good job of it.
Good point. And to me, as always, we're much wiser, all of us now, than we were a few minutes ago before speaking to you. Thanks for explaining what's expected to happen in the next few days.
Thank you.
So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, a very, very special segment today on the passing away of Queen Elizabeth II and the proclamation of King Charles III. And we've now found out what's going to happen and how it will happen. So this has been a very, very special segment for that. And we'd like to thank everyone for joining in today. And it has been wonderful having your company. But just before we finish up, let's take a look at functions and events taking place right here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for joining us on this Saturday, the 10th of September, until our next show, which will be Aapki Sehat, a monthly presentation of Indian Medical Association of Queensland, presented by Dr. Cheryl Fernandes, coming up at 10 a.m. We will see you then. Until then, it's goodbye from us.